Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Unfiltered and Unapologetic. I'm your host, Caitlin Gil-Soto, and this is a space where we have honest conversations about healing, relationships, money, faith, personal growth, and the cultural and emotional experiences that shape who we become. The conversations our families didn't always have, the lessons life teaches us anyway, and what it actually looks like to build a life that feels aligned with who we are becoming. So, whether you're driving, cleaning, at the gym, or on a walk, or avoiding a text message you've been meaning to answer, I'm glad you're here. Let's get into today's episode. So, I want to start with a simple question. What do you actually enjoy? Not what you're good at, not what pays your bills, not what you're responsible for or what other people expect from you. What do you actually enjoy? And if you're struggling to answer that question, you're not alone. Because I think a lot of us know exactly what we're responsible for. We know our deadlines, our bills, our obligations, our family's expectations, but somewhere along the way, many of us lost touch with ourselves. And today, I want to talk about why that happens and how we begin reconnecting with who we are outside of our responsibilities. For a long time, if someone asked me who I was, I would have answered with what I do. I work in clinical research, I'm a student, a podcaster, a daughter, a sister. But over time, I realized those are roles, important roles, but they're not the full picture of who I am. And I think a lot of us get so busy fulfilling our responsibilities that we forget we're people outside of them, especially if you grew up in a family where survival, stability, education, and hard work were prioritized. Many of us learned how to be responsible before we learned how to know ourselves. We learned how to achieve, how to work, how to help, how to sacrifice, how to take care of everyone else. But nobody really taught us how to explore. Nobody taught us how to figure out what brought us joy, what interested us, what made us feel alive. And honestly, I can see that in my own life. For years, my focus was school and work. If I wasn't working, I was studying. If I wasn't studying, I was thinking about the next thing I needed to accomplish, the next goal, the next milestone, the next achievement. And while there's nothing wrong with being ambitious, I eventually realized something. I knew how to be productive, but I wasn't always creating space for joy. I wasn't always creating space to discover who I was outside of my responsibilities. And I think that's where a lot of people find themselves. Not lost, just disconnected from parts of themselves they've never had time to explore. I have the first journal prompt here for you guys. When was the last time I did something simply because I enjoyed it? And the affirmation for this question is I am allowed to explore who I am outside of my responsibilities. One thing I've learned over the past few years is that being busy and feeling alive are not the same thing. You can be incredibly productive and still feel disconnected from yourself. You can accomplish goals and still feel like something's missing. Because achievement and fulfillment aren't always the same thing. And that's something I've had to learn firsthand. Some of the things that bring me the most joy today weren't things I always did. Hiking, long walks, traveling, going to the gym, recording this podcast, even things like yoga and stretching. These weren't things that magically appeared in my life. I discovered them because I gave myself permission to try them. And not every experience became a lifelong passion, but each experience taught me something about myself. And I think that's important because a lot of people are trying to find themselves through thinking. They're trying to think their way into clarity. But sometimes clarity comes through experience. Sometimes you don't find yourself by thinking. You find yourself by living, by trying, and by exploring. You find yourself by saying yes to things you've never done before. And I think that's one of the reasons why so many people feel stuck. They're waiting to discover themselves without giving themselves new experiences. But new experiences often reveal new parts of who we are. I have another prompt here for you guys. What activities make me lose track of time? And the affirmation for this question is, I give myself permission to explore new experiences without needing a perfect outcome. Something else I've been thinking about lately is how much pressure we put on ourselves to stay the same. Sometimes we say we don't know what we like anymore because we're comparing ourselves to an older version of ourselves. We're looking for interests we had 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or even longer than that. But growth changes us. The things I enjoy today aren't necessarily the thing I enjoyed years ago. I've changed, my priorities changed, my interests have changed, the way I spend my time has changed, and that's okay. I think sometimes we struggle because we're trying to reconnect with the version of ourselves we've already outgrown. And maybe self-discovery isn't about finding who we were. Maybe it's about meeting who we've become. Another thing I realized is that adults often stop trying new things because we're used to being competent. We don't want to look awkward, we don't want to be beginners, and we don't want to fail. But every hobby, every interest, every skill, every passion starts with being a beginner. When I first started this podcast, I was a beginner. When I started hiking, I was a beginner. When I went back to school, I was a beginner again. Growth requires us to be willing to look inexperienced sometimes. And I think that's a lesson many of us need to hear. I have another prompt here for you guys. What version of myself am I still holding on to that no longer fits? And the affirmation for this question is, I give myself permission to grow, evolve, and become who I am meant to be. If you've been feeling disconnected from yourself lately, I don't think the answer is putting pressure on yourself to figure everything out overnight. I think the answer is curiosity. Instead of asking, what's my purpose? Maybe start with, what am I curious about? What sounds interesting? What have I always wanted to try? What would I do if nobody judged me? Maybe it's taking a class, trying a new hobby, reading different books, exploring a new city, volunteering, taking yourself out somewhere. Maybe it's something bigger, maybe it's something small. The point isn't to find your passion in one weekend. The point is to start paying attention to yourself again, to start listening to yourself again, to start creating experiences that allow you to learn who you are becoming. Because self-discovery isn't a destination. It's an ongoing relationship with yourself. I have the last journal prompt here for you guys. If nobody judged me, what would I spend more time doing? And the affirmation for this question is, I trust myself to explore, evolve, and discover new parts of who I am. And before we move into today's prayer, I want to invite you to stay connected with me outside of the podcast. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok at Unfill and Unapologetic Pod. And if this episode resonated with you, please consider sharing it with someone who might need to hear it. Sometimes one conversation can arrive at exactly the right moment in someone's life. You can support the podcast through the links in the episode description. Every share, follow, review, and message helps me continue creating these conversations and reaching more people. You can find the links to my digital products in the show notes as well. Now, let's close with a short prayer. Put your hand on your chest and take a deep breath. Dear God, thank you for the unique gifts, talents, interests, and purpose you have placed within me. Help me reconnect with the parts of myself that I may have neglected while I was busy surviving, achieving, working, studying, or taking care of everyone else. Give me the courage to try new things, the patience to trust the process, and the confidence to grow into the person you created me to be. Help me release the pressure to have everything figured out and instead become curious about who I am becoming. Remind me that my worth has never been based on my productivity, accomplishments, job title, or roles. My worth comes from who I am in you. Guide me as I continue to grow, explore, and discover new parts of myself. And help me trust that every season of change is part of the journey you have for me. Amen. Before I go, I want to leave you with one final thought. Maybe you don't need to figure out who you are. Maybe you just need to become curious about who you're becoming. Because the person you're meant to be isn't hiding from you. They're waiting for you to give yourself permission to meet them. Thank you so much for spending part of your day with me. And as always, thank you for being a part of this community. Until next time, keep showing up for yourself. I'll see you in the next episode.